And part of the way that we bring momentum is by lifting the morale of people and of our ministry. So if you don't like the trajectory of your ministry or the morale of your leaders, that's more of a you problem and a me problem than it is a they problem. And so what I want to do is help us learn to lift the morale of people that we lead or people that we're with. Now, for some of us, it can be like, well, man, I don't really lead a whole lot. It doesn't matter. It's not about what you lead. It's about you are a leader, and even if you're following, you're still a leader, and leaders lift the morale whether they have the mic or whether they're on the stage or whether they're in a seat, right? It is our job to lift, whether we're running the meeting or not, doesn't matter. We lift the morale of people so that the momentum of a meeting can lift, and we dictate. We don't just sit back and watch what happens. We make it happen, right? I like to kind of think of it like we bring our own weather. You know what I mean? Like bring your own weather. And some of us, we need to get better at bringing our own weather. I mean, if we want the atmosphere to change, then guess what? We do it, right? And so part of the way we do that is by looking and saying, hey, the small group I attend, or the meeting I'm a part of, or the all staff I sit in, right? It's the group I lead. It's the meeting I run. It's the service I have, but it's also what I'm a part of. As a leader, I will not sit and just allow something to be. I bring my own weather and I dictate the atmosphere. And so for some of you, it just needs to be a switch in your mind and in your heart that says, you know what? I'm a leader and I'm going to dictate the atmosphere, dictate the momentum. And when you even look at Jesus all throughout the Word of God, you'll find that he shifted the atmosphere, right? He shifted it, whether it was doing miracles, or whether it was speaking life into someone, or whether it was bringing questions to the religious. He shifted the atmosphere and he brought his own weather. This word morale isn't a word that we use a lot, but I think it's so important. And here's what it says. It says the mental and emotional state. That's what we're talking about. You're going to lift people's mental and emotional state. And that's like their spirit, their enthusiasm, their confidence, their buy-in of an individual or group with regard to the function or tasks at hand, right? And here's the point. It's a sense of common purpose with respect to a group. And so for us, what we have to recognize is every meeting, whether it's going the way you want it, whether the band is singing the song that you like or not, we bring momentum by lifting the morale of the people around us. And so in your notes, write this in. The morale of a team is determined by those of its individuals. So again, if you don't like the morale and the momentum of your ministry or your small group, and you go to small group and you're like, dude, this is not fun. That's more of a you problem than a they problem. Because a leader can shift the atmosphere, bring its own weather. And so we need to be better at not only dictating that, but creating that in the lives of those that we lead. Because it's determined by those of its individuals. And then in your notes as well, the morale of a team will be determined by its effectiveness. In other words, you've got to recognize that it's individuals that bring the momentum, and the effectiveness of that ministry will lift the morale there. And so how are we going to actually make a difference? How are we going to do that? So I want to walk through and help you bring your own weather, okay? I want you to bring your own weather to meetings. I want you to bring your own weather when it comes to services. I want you to bring your own weather. So as leaders, whether you're leading it or not, how are we going to do that? And this is, by the way, especially with what we're walking through and how life is so different from what it used to be 7 months ago, we better be even better at this than we were a year ago. Because right now, there are people that literally live more like thermometers than thermostats, right? And they don't set anything. They just are like, dude, it's hot in here, or it's depressing, right? And they just exist and live it. They're like Eeyore, right? Is that a thing? Is that a dude? That's a dude, right? A little donkey dude. Yeah. And then, is he a donkey? Yes. That's right. He is a donkey. And so we lift the morale by giving people. And so I want to take this word morale, and I want to walk through each letter of that, and I want to kind of teach us how to lift the morale and change the weather. You ready? Number M. Number M is medals. Write it in. We got to be better at creating wins. That's what this is all about. It's about giving medals. I mean, think about the Olympics. The Olympics would not be the Olympics without the medal ceremony. They've understood something. Do I care about synchronized swimming? Not that much. But they still give a medal for it, right? Do I care about archery? Not as much as other things. But the thing is, they give a medal for everything, whether you care for it or not. And at the end, you're talking about like 1,000 different medals are given out, or maybe even more than that. Why? Because they've understood that if you can create wins, you can change the atmosphere of the event. And so for us, what we've got to do is watch how we change the atmosphere. And what we have to do is learn to create wins when there aren't wins. Now, you may even go, well, dude, that's a little shady, right? No, you do it all the time. I do it all the time. If you got kids in this room, you have created a win. When they bring home a sheet of paper that they colored when they're 4 years old, look, if we're really honest, you're not framing that up and putting it in any museum in America. Why? Because it's ugly. That's why. And then when those kids get in a play and they do that and they don't know any of the lines, they may be cute, but it's not good. And what do we do at the end of it? We create wins for them, don't we? When they write a story and they bring it home, now if you ain't got kids, you still do it because someone else's kids comes up to you and they go, look what I did. And inside you're going, that is ugly. You mean kids that are 6 can't do better than that, you know? But what do? You create a win. You go, oh my word, that is amazing. You know what you just did? You brought your own weather. Now, if you're going to call faking it in a meeting, then you got to say that you're lying to a 6-year-old. Then let's change it and be truthful. Kid, that is ugly. Wait till you're 18 to start painting. You don't do that. You want to know why? Because wins are incremental. And if you win at every stage, look, a win for a 4-year-old is different from a win at a 21-year-old. Different from a win at 31 years old. And so in other words, you need to start creating wins in a meeting as though it's 2 years old. Because if your atmosphere is bad, it's just an infant, man. And you got to realize that it is our job to create wins, to celebrate things that maybe we wish they were like 10 times better, but we're not going to get 10 times better until we start going, we're on the right road. We're on the right road. And start learning how to metaphorically hang medals on the people in those meetings. Hang medals on your small group. Hang medals on your employees. Hang medals on the people that are around. 1 Samuel 17. David actually just defeated Goliath and all that. And in the same verse, we see things have changed. And here we are, people were scared for 40 days. And then all of a sudden, it says this. When the Philistines saw that their hero was dead, they turned and ran. Then the men of Israel and Judah surged forward with a shout and pursued the Philistines to the entrance of Gath and to the gate of Ekron. Their dead were strewn along that weird place, road in Gath and Ekron. Now think about this for just a second. These are the same people, think about this, who just days before would not fight Goliath or the Philistines. What happened? Somebody won. And somebody won, so the same soldiers that were cowardly and fearful and scared and said, dude, what are we even doing here? We need to go home. The same ones that didn't want to be there or fight, all of a sudden chased down the Philistines and killed them all. Do you see the change in the people around him? Because one man, David, brought his own weather and said, no, God's going to win. And so look, I know that you may not love your volunteers. You may not love a lot of the things that are going on, maybe in a meeting or whatever. But when you create your own win, you bring weather to the situation. And all of a sudden people will change because you're a leader and you hung a medal on something. And all of a sudden everything shifts. Do you see this? These same people were scared and terrified and couldn't do jack. But then David showed up, brought his own weather, hung a medal on himself, and said, we are winners. And all of a sudden, boom. So you need to create wins. Start creating let people see the small wins so that the small wins can add up to be big wins that you really want. You're not going to get there unless you learn to create your own weather. You lift morale, and that starts with medals. It starts with wins. When's the last time you celebrated a win? When's the last time you just simply clapped as a team and said, come on? When's the last time that you just said, look, I know things are different, but God, are you seeing what God's doing? Create those wins. I mean, bend over to your little 2-year-old leaders, right? And say, that is amazing. And inside you can say, dude, hurry up and grow up because you're an idiot, right? You can say that in here. But out here, bring the weather. Because they're not going to mature until you teach them to win. In your notes, write this in. Nothing gives confidence like wins and destroys confidence like losses. Even in the midst of a loss, you need to find a win so that the focus is on the win, not the loss. Now, I'm not saying that you don't go back and learn from the loss. I'm not saying that you don't go back and talk about the loss. But you need to learn to celebrate wins, that even in the midst of losses, there's still good things happening. Even in the midst of our crowd not being what it was 8 months ago, it's still good. Because God's still meeting people's lives and touching people's. We're still getting testimonies of what God is doing in their heart, whether they're at home or here. Things feel different for us, and we could say it's kind of a loss because the audience isn't, the crowd isn't, right? The volunteers aren't, that this isn't. And we can look at all the arts and isn't. But it's time that you learn as a leader to bring your weather and look at the R's and isn't. In September 1995, that's before most of you were born, there was a basketball team called the Harlem Globetrotters. Now, I got to know this before I keep going. How many of you know what the Harlem Globetrotters are? Okay, that's more than I thought. Okay, Harlem Globetrotters was like a basketball team that would travel, and they were like professionals, but they weren't professionals because they would just put on a show. So they would sell out stadiums. They would sell out stadiums like the Houston Rockets, whatever it might be, stadiums like that, Toyota Center, and they would actually sell it out. People would come, and they would play a real basketball team that was trying to play real, and they would be playing real too, but they would beat everybody. Now, this is crazy, because the Harlem Globetrotters would come in, they would do like fun stuff with a bucket of confetti and water and try to throw it on people. They had fun, and they'd dribble in circles and like make people look silly, but the other team was really trying to win. But the thing is, Harlem Globetrotters were so good that they always won. Always. As a matter of fact, this is crazy. I want you to get this just to kind of grasp the reality of it. The Harlem Globetrotters ended up losing a game 91-85, and the world was shocked. The world was shocked. They lost 91-85, and you go, why were they shocked? I'll tell you why. Because they had a 24 years winning streak. They hadn't lost a game. You go, well, yeah, they only played like 1 or 2 games a year. Nope. You ready for this? They had won 8,829 straight games without losing one. 8,820? Do you even hear the words coming out of my mouth, Andre? 8,829 straight wins without a loss. All of a sudden they lose in 1995. From that point of September 1995, they since lost 60% of their games over the next 5 years and began to fade in popularity and what they were doing. And now, I don't even know if they exist. Most of you may not even know who they are, really. You just heard the name. The difference is somehow the losses got in their mind, and the wins, W-I-N, got in their rearview mirror. What we've got to do is make sure that even if we're losing some things, we keep the wins in front of us, and the losses we put in our rearview mirror. Because if all we do is lose as a meeting, as a team, is the trajectory of your small group, listen, you don't even lead your small group. Good. Be a leader and make it better. Make that thing better. Bring the weather and change it. Create some wins that you can celebrate. That's what leaders do. Listen, here's a better question for you. When's the last time you didn't celebrate a win, but you brought the win for others to celebrate? Because see, some of us, we kind of get in the mode, well, yeah, man, if Elisha brings it, I'll celebrate. Are you kidding? I'll go eat for free for any reason, man. I'll celebrate. But look, if he's the only one bringing the wins, he's the only leader. Does that make sense? So assess yourself right now. Say, when's the last time I looked at the wins and kept the wins for my leaders, for my team, for the church, for our small group? Bring the wins. Hang the medals. You're going to lift morale, and the whole thing changes when you begin to create wins and hang medals on people. O. Number O. Ownership. You know how you lift the morale of a meeting? You know how you lift the morale of a department, of a trajectory of a ministry, a small group? Here's what you do. Listen to me. You got to create wins, but secondly, you got to create ownership. You got to give them an active part because people care about what they're a part of. Do you even understand that? People care about it. Listen, even if it's not good, if they're a part of it, they want to make it better, and all of a sudden they feel like they have ownership to do it. And in your notes, write this in. People get more excited about what belongs to them. They get more excited about what belongs to them. I mean, think about it. Like whether it's things that aren't even that fun, but people will post about it on Instagram, Facebook, and talk about, oh man, just living my best life, right? right? And I just want to slap them because you don't even like what you're doing. You just want other people to think you like what you're doing. But really, people like themselves. That's why 90% of people's pictures are about themselves and have themselves in it. And so what you got to recognize from that is if you want to lift the morale of your ministry and the trajectory thing, then start putting people in it. Because they like themselves a lot. They like themselves more than they like you, and more than they like what you're doing, more than they like your ministry, more than they like your small group. They like themselves. So give them something to own. It's something to carry. It's just like kids, right? We just talked about them. But the truth is, you probably, especially those of you that have been in youth ministry, I can't tell you how many recitals, band recitals, plays. I can't tell you how many things I've gone to at high schools and junior highs to watch for my students. And I mean, some of them are good. Yes, some of them, not many, but some of them. Because I'm comparing them to Broadway, right? And so for me, I got a different perspective. But you know what's amazing to me is every time I go to a school, here's what happens. You got moms with cell phones, like just recording every scene. You got mom, when their kid comes out on stage, I mean, a mom's standing up blocking, it doesn't even matter who's behind them. They block it because they're recording. In the back of the room, they got tripods set up, all that. They've hired recording companies to come and just film it, right? They've hired out H and DJ Val and Tommy to come out there and just film it and edit it so that it looks good. Why? Because their baby is a tree on stage. They don't even have any speaking parts. But they spent thousands of bucks because their kid is up on stage like a tree, and they didn't even do nothing. And at one point, they had to make the scene look like it was moving, so they would just do this right here, down the stage. And at the end, what happens? All their friends come up, give them roses, and they're just like, you were amazing. Their parents come up crying and just want to take pictures by the set on stage. And everybody is so happy. And all you were was a tree in a play that wasn't even that good. The point is, you want to win, create momentum, start putting people in the ministry. Create ownership. Give them something to own. And you go, well, man, they're not ready yet. No, that's wrong. You're not ready. You're not ready. And you're not leading well. Because here's the deal. If you want to create ownership, you go, well, they can't handle a small group. Right. So have a path for them to get to there. So here's the way I think about it. Give them something small to do. When they're faithful, when they do that, give them something big to do. Then when they're faithful in that and start knocking that out, then give them people. Sometimes what we do is we try to create ownership by giving them people. And they haven't even proven faithful in the small or the big. But Scripture says, if we're faithful in the little, we'll make you ruler over what, Dallas? Much. And so there's a path scripturally for us to actually follow. And so if you want to raise people up and give them ownership and create morale, give them something small to do. See if they're faithful. See if they're worthy. If they start caring about it, camera crews start showing up, right? Parents start taking pictures. They're knocking it out of the park. Give them something big to do. They do that, then you know I can trust them with people. Now they can pastor a small group. Now they can be on the prayer team. Come on, think about this. This is important. So you give them ownership. And look, here's the point. Sometimes we go, well, man, my people, my small group, they don't take any ownership. I used to get so mad at people because I'd be like, man, it's stupid, man. I'm the only one that cares. You ever felt like that? I'm the only one that cares. I used to thought that for years, man. I'm the only one that cares. Until God kind of shifted my whole perspective, and I started thinking this right here. You know, maybe they're not taking ownership because I'm not giving them anything to own. So maybe what you got to stop and do is recognize, and fill this in your notes, they can't take ownership unless they are given ownership. It doesn't have to be big ownership or people ownership, but you got to give them something small. Then you'll find out who can take care of the big. And then you'll find out who can take care of the people. Ephesians 4 says Christ himself, he himself gave apostles, some to be prophets, evangelists, pastors and teachers to equip who? Thank you. Equip who? The people, not themselves. What do we always say? If you're doing your job, listen to me, you're not doing your job. Okay, I'm going to say that again. If you are in this room and you are doing your job, you're not doing your job. Because your job is to raise people up, give them ownership, teach them how to edit, teach them how to do, teach them how to lead, teach them how to set up, teach them how to lead with excellence. Your job is that. If you're doing your job, pat yourself on the back that things went great Sunday. But I'm not patting you on the back because that's not your job. Your job is to raise people up and give them ownership. They can't take ownership unless you give it to them. And scripturally, Ephesians 4 tells us, this is what we do. If you're an apostle, pastor, prophet, leader, evangelist, teacher, this is what we do. We equip people for the works of ministry, of service, so that the body of Christ may be built up. In other words, morale and momentum and the message lifts. Remember that first blank at the top? When we lift people's morale, the momentum and the message lifts. Okay. Metals, ownership, R. I think this is huge too. Recognition. Recognition. This is different than wins. Sometimes just people just need to hear you say, I appreciate you. I appreciate you. We got to catch people doing something right. I think it's really easy to always set up meetings when someone's doing something wrong. It's always easy to call someone in and go, hey, let's talk about this. You dropped the ball on that. Now, if you're a leader and all your one-on-ones, emergency one-on-ones, not regular one-on-ones, are filled with what needs to improve, you're missing it. You're not lifting morale, you're beating people down. I'm not saying to stop that, because we got to lead strong. But what you got to realize is we've got to lead well enough that people know their value even if they're messing up. So recognition will lift the morale and give them the fuel they need to keep going even when they mess up. Does that make sense? Because if you really think about it, nobody in this room is perfect. I'm nowhere near perfect. Some of you are way more perfect than I am. And you're not even perfect. The point is, all of us mess up. Let's have a little bit of grace, but let's not cover it up and throw it away in the closet. But let's recognize what people, instead of just catching them doing something wrong, how about we catch people doing something right? Let's create an atmosphere of honor, recognition. And let's be kind to people. Romans 13 says, give everyone what you owe them. If taxes, pay taxes. If revenue, then revenue. If respect, listen, he changes the game on you right there. If respect, then respect. And then he says, if honor, then honor. And what we need to do a better job of doing is giving people what they're owed. And that doesn't mean that you should expect a bonus or a free lunch or a pat on the back everything you do, because that's impossible. Because some people are never going to see all that you actually do. So don't start becoming a leader that needs the pat on the backs to keep going, because then that just becomes weird in itself. But as leaders, what we need to do is be better about recognizing those around us. In your notes, write it in. When we fail to notice, they often fail to try. When we fail to notice, they often fail to try. They just start giving up. So let me just ask a couple questions that are right there on the sheet that you can kind of wrestle with on your own. They're not even great, but they at least trampoline you into thinking. Is what can you do new right now to recognize people? What can you do creatively to recognize some of the volunteers, staff members, to do better at this right here? And then here's another one. What can you do consistently to create an atmosphere of honor and recognition on your team, in your small group? Come on, think about it. Because even if you don't lead that ministry, that department, this is what leaders do. Leaders, you don't have to be the leader to recognize someone and say thank you. You don't. Because every one of us in this room, whether we're over the service, the meeting, the small group, whatever it is, we need to be people who create honor, recognition, and change the atmosphere. We bring our own weather. The weather of grace is determined by the people in this room. Okay. Recognize. Weatherman. Make sure they. All right, so medals, ownership, recognition. And then 4 is adventure. I think this is huge. Adventure. Sometimes people just need a hill to climb. Sometimes you got to create an enemy just to go to war. Listen to me. Listen to me. Quit playing church. What's the vision? Let's charge the hill. Let's pick up the swords. Let's give people a spiritual adventure. I'm not talking about like an adventure like, hey, let's go golfing, or hey, let's go skydiving. Those are great too. Have those. That's part of recognition and celebrating. That's part of M. Medals, winning. That's part of. I'm talking about a spiritual adventure. Let's give it to them. Man, come on. Let's challenge people to encounter the Spirit of God. Don't just have the same old, same old. Come on, let's fight for something. Hebrews 11 says, it's talking about, all this going on, and then he says, by definition, a pilgrim is simply a traveler, a crusader, a trailblazer. But watch what it says. These all died in faith, not having received the promises, but having seen them far off, and were persuaded of them, embraced them, and confessed that they were strangers and pilgrims. Circle that word, pilgrims. They would confess that they were strangers and pilgrims on earth. In other words, this isn't our home, but pilgrims is nothing more than a crusader, a traveler, a warrior. It's someone who blazes a trail for others to experience. And what we've got to do is be pilgrims who blaze a trail for our volunteers, our staff, our leaders, our kids, those in our ministry. If we're not the leader, those that are around us that sit on the same rows as us. We've got to help people have a spiritual adventure. Pick up a sword and go, because people aren't going to just sit there. I've told this story a couple times. I'm going to say it anyway just because I like it. And that is Larry Walters. He was a 33-year-old man in California who actually one day was just bored. He was sitting in his backyard drinking some beer. And so he was sitting there. So he went to his local Army surplus store and got him to fill up 33 used weather balloons. And so they filled him up. They delivered him to his house. He tied him to his lawn chair. And so he sits there and he goes, man, I'm going to see what happens here. And so some of his buddies got there and he had anchored the lawn chair down. And all of a sudden, as he's sitting there, and he got, 45 used weather balloons, he's sitting there and he wrapped himself in the lawn chair. Here's what he did. Took 3 things. Took a 6-pack of beer, because if you're going to float in the air, why not, right? 6-pack of beer, a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and a BB gun. Because he thought, dude, if I get going too high, I'll just shoot the balloons and float back down. This will be fun. And so he gets there and he does something stupid. First off, do you even understand what I'm saying? The dude's sitting in a lawn chair. I'm not talking about an airplane. I'm talking about a lawn chair. I'm talking about a rusty old lawn chair. And he gets 45 used weather balloons, and he's got people there helping him do this. And so they're sitting, because think about it. He can't strap it. Somebody had to deliver those things. And he had to sit in that thing, and his friends had to cut the cords from the lawn chair. He starts floating in the air, and he's thinking, man, I may go, I don't know, like, if I was in a lawn chair, and I went the top of this ceiling, how tall is the ceiling? Ward, you know? Just guess.
60 feet.
60 feet? Yeah. Okay, if this is 60 feet high, I don't want to go that high in a lawn chair. You know what this dude went? This dude went 1,000 feet in the air. 1,000 feet in the air. Didn't stop. But he had a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. He had a 6-pack of beer. And he had a BB gun. And as he's going past 1,000, he starts freaking out because his lawn chair doesn't stop. He goes 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, 5,000 feet in the air, Marco. Do you hear me? Then he goes 6,000, 7,000, 8,000, 9,000, 10,000 feet. Planes can't even go that high. I mean, they can, that's a joke, but planes can't even go that high. I mean, 10,000 feet in the air in a lawn chair with nothing but a BB gun, peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and a 6-pack of beer. Think about this. He goes past 10,000 feet to 11,000 feet in the air. He starts floating over the LAX airport. They had to shut down flights at the LAX airport, coming in and going out for 6 hours. As a guy in a lawn chair with a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, 6-pack of beer, and a BB gun floats over the LAX airport. So they had to come, bring him down. The Air Force shot him, killed him. No, they didn't do it. The Air Force, I'm just kidding. They brought him down, finally got him on the ground. Obviously, he was arrested because you can't just do that. And they put him in a chair. And here's the questions. I put the questions on your sheet for you. I asked them 3 questions. Were you scared? The answer is obviously yes. If I went 60 feet up in the air, where would I be scared in a lawn chair? Right? I can't even go in the lift that we have. I can't go that high in a lift. He goes in a lawn chair with nothing but a BB gun, 6-pack of beer. And what, Ray? The sandwich. So he goes up there and he asks him, were you scared? Yes. Would you do it again? He said, no. And then they said, well, then why'd you do it? Here's what he said. Because you just can't sit there. You know what he was saying? He was saying, dude, I'm bored. I need something. I need something. I need adventure. I need vision. He didn't have a stupid problem. I mean, he was stupid. He didn't have a stupid problem. He had a vision problem. You know what I'm convinced about is this. I'm convinced that the people we lead don't have a sin problem as much as they have a vision problem. Now, I'm not saying they're not sinning. The reason people get stupid and sin and stuff is not because they have a sin problem. I mean, they do have a problem with sin, but they have a bigger vision problem that we haven't given them a spiritual adventure big enough to sell out the lawn chair, the beer, the sandwiches, and the BB guns and say, you know what, this is more exciting over here. And we got to create that. Sorry, Dad, I got all over your grill. We got to get creative with our vision and saying, what kind of adventure am I giving people? Because if it's the same old, listen, they're going to sit in their lawn chairs with beer, sandwiches, and BB guns and do something stupid. Let's give them something to live for, because we have a greater yes inside. We can say no to the things of this world when our yes is big enough in here. So give them adventure. Lead. Okay, medals, ownership, recognition, adventure. I'll quickly go. I realize. Love. Number L. Love. People enjoy seeing someone that they feel, serving someone that they feel cares about them as a person. And I think it's really important that you circle that last word. I know that sentence doesn't sing, but let me just tell you, circle that last word. Because the word person is really what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about you love someone and care about them because of what they do for you. I'm not talking about that you love and care for that person because they bring momentum to your ministry, or they know how to serve and work real hard, so you're trying to take care of them so that they stay there. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about care for them as a person. No matter what, even when you screw up, I'm not leaving you. Even when you fail and aren't a good leader, I'm still going to love you. Come on. Let's create this where people are loved and accepted and cared for, not because of what they do, but because of who they are. Matthew 3 says, and a voice from heaven, this is when Jesus was baptized, heavens opened up, and I love what God says about Jesus. He said, and a voice from heaven saying, this is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. He said, Son, in whom I am well pleased. He didn't say, this is the Messiah. Could have. People were still questioning it. He could have said, this is Christ. He could have. He didn't. And the reason is because he was trying to emphasize the relational aspect of being pleased and caring for them. In your notes, write it in. Who they are is more important than what they do. I'm not saying don't value it. I just had a whole point on recognition about what they do and saying thank you. I had a whole point on medals about creating wins and celebrating wins of what people do. But if you're missing the aspect of who they are, you've missed it as a leader. And I'm not even talking about being the leader. I'm talking about in this room, we bring the weather. We bring the weather. We bring the weather. The weather of grace is determined by those in this room. Love. And then last is examples. And this is kind of like, let me just put ourselves on the operating table for a minute. How's your morale? How's your momentum? You go, that ain't much to get excited. Listen, momentum is a choice. Passion, listen to me, is a choice. I don't care how tired you are. Some of you don't even know what tired is. You think you do, you don't. But passion is a choice. Do you hear me? It's not a result. Momentum is not necessarily a result as much as it is a choice. It's true. It's more of a choice than it is a result. If you don't have it, it's not a they problem. It's a you problem. It's a me problem. How's your morale? And here's why. Because we in this room bring the weather. And people feed off of us. Our character, our courage, our commitment, our spirit, our attitude, our negativity, positivity, come on, our worship. They feed off of us. 1 Samuel says David was greatly distressed, for the people spoke of stoning him. Yeah, I think I'd be scared too if they picked up rocks and said, about to kill you. And then Scripture says this in verse 6, but David encouraged himself. He had like self-ministry. Yeah. He didn't just stay in his depression. He didn't just go buy a gallon of Blue Bell and sit on the couch, right? Think about it. He didn't just sleep in and say, I'm going to take a sick day. He encouraged himself in the Lord. And some of you, here's what you need to do. You need to remember, I'm going to back through, okay, if you don't know what I'm doing. Some of you need to remember, we're winning, we're not losing. Come on, it's going to change the tenor of your heart. We're winning, we're not losing. People are involved. I know we don't have as many volunteers as we used to right now. It's okay. People are involved and they're taking ownership. Are you kidding? You have some of the best volunteers in the nation. Come on, recognize what is happening around and don't just see the negative, see the positive, and learn that you're on an adventure yourself. The reason you're in this is a spiritual adventure. People can't catch vision from you unless you have it. And God has placed you and He's given you this job. I know it may not be what you're going to do 10 years from now, but right now recognize that God's hand is on your life and you're in the midst of an adventure. And people love you and God loves you and He has put you here. And here in this church, we love you. And you need to recognize God is smiling above and saying, I'm pleased with you. But then examples. Come on, let's be that. And sometimes you just gotta like get it right here. Like, you ever done that? Like, just some of you can't. Like, because you bruise your sternum. But here's the point. Sometimes, man, I'm just when I do that, I'm talking to myself. I'm like, wake up, idiot. Come on, get it, right? Minister to yourself. We all minister in different ways. Don't judge me for beating myself up. In your notes, write it in and we're done. Before they have passion themselves, they must see passion in us. If your group doesn't have the weather you want, it's not a they problem. It's a me problem. Let's pray. God help us. Amen.
Okay, everybody, just a couple things to let you know about and talk about. Number one, we had a great Sunday. Just want to share that with all of you. Don't know where you were in ministry or what you were doing. If you were in here or in there or over there or wherever you were, we had a great Sunday, and we are growing. So all the way around, numbers are up, we're growing, more people are coming back, and here's something that you may not know. We're also having brand new people come every single week. In fact, Dallas said that this last Sunday, there were so many people lined up at Guest Central that they had to start splitting the line and bringing new people in to connect with them because there was that many. So somebody just praise God for that, because that's what we're about, right? Reaching people. Thumbs up. So good stuff. That's really good. Second thing, just kind of looking ahead, a couple things to pray about. This Sunday, continuing the series, this Sunday's message is going to be about Moses. I'm going to talk about what happens when you try to do everything on your own versus when you allow God to do it through you. So that's kind of where the message is going. So you can be praying about that. So the whole turnaround thing, that's where we're headed. And then personally, I want to ask you to be praying. Today, this afternoon, Andre and I are going to go to the back doctor. So most of you know that Andre's had a back issue for a lot of years. Pardon? I'm going to explain it in just a second. Yeah. So it's a surgeon who we're going to go see. So let me just give you kind of the background to ask you to pray. Andre's had a problem with her back for a long time. All the way back from her college days when she was playing volleyball. And there's a genetic thing there that runs in her family, a weakness in her lower back. So about 12 years ago, she reached over to pick up a coffee cup and snapped her back and couldn't straighten up. And that's when we started seeing doctors on a regular basis. So from then until now, about every year at least, she gets injections in her back to help with the inflammation and swelling. And what'll happen is that'll work for a while, and then she'll be good.